everyone, welcome or welcome back to Cooking with Frenchie. Cooking and baking made easy. I hope you had a wonderful week. As promised last week, I'm following up onto my sourdough starter and my sourdough recipe. So this week it's all about the rye sourdough, the recipe, the technique, and how I feed my sourdough. So before we go ahead, don't forget to subscribe as usual. Also change your notification bell setting, and if you can, put a comment under the description. In this video you will see there's a little bit more details. You will also find the link to my recipe with all the ingredients I use, a time frame and a guide of a time frame how I make that dough. It takes a bit of time in general, but you don't have much to do yourself hands-on, so it's all about patience. Hope you enjoyed this recipe, and I hope to see you soon. Before I go, make sure you use some baker's flour or bread flour. This recipe has a rye flour. If you do not have rye flour or you can't access it, you can always make it with baker's flour. So don't panic, take your time, give it a try. Remember, the environment is very important, temperature would be very important. So I hope you enjoy it, and see you next time. First of all, grab your starter and give it a feed. If you do not have a starter ready, check my other recipe, the one I did last week about how to make a beautiful starter. So here I'm using 80 grams of sourdough starter. I will add about 40 grams of flour and 40 grams of water to it. So I start this recipe at 8 p.m. at night, and I'll let it fed itself for about 11-12 hours outside at room temperature. The environment is so important. The room temperature should be about 25 degrees Celsius, and your water as well. It does help to have a good temperature around. Too cold, it will take a little bit longer. Too warm, it will go way faster. So the feeding is used with the natural yeast of the flour. So for this recipe, we do not use any yeast. So I'm giving a good mix with a fork. And I will cover my starter and let it feed itself overnight. So I start about 150-200 ml, and you will see later on. In the morning, first thing I do is my otolis. So in a large bowl, I add my rye flour, about 70 grams I believe, and I had my baker's flour. Baker's flour, bread flour, high protein flour, very important because it gives the elasticity of the dough. So therefore the yeast is releasing, or the natural yeast is releasing what we call carbon dioxide, and that's been trapped within the dough by the elasticity of the flour. So I add the salt. Don't forget the salt is important. Give it a quick mix. Add your water, about 175 grams. Mix it well. So it's gonna feel a little bit pasty, a little bit dry, but that's normal. So that's your otolis. Once it's done, cover it with a damp cloth and leave it on the bench for about an hour. An hour later, now you can see my starter has been fed. Happy-go-lucky. An hour later, I'm adding this starter to my otolis. Start a quick mix with a spatula at first, and then about a good 3 minutes workout with my hand. And I'm squeezing and turning at the same time, just to make sure there's no big lumps here and there. And it should feel a little sticky, but once you start pulling the dough away from the bowl, it should detach. So that's how we know. It's not gonna be a smooth finish, and that's normal. From there, I'm gonna leave it for a bit, and that's what we call the stage of bulk fermenting. I cover it, and about an hour later, I start to do a bit of a folding through the bulk fermentation. So what's the folding do? It traps a bit more air. So I'm using the north side or the side away, and I fold from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top, and then from the right to the left and left to the right. I do that, cover it, leave it for half an hour, and do it again. I stretch away from it towards me, from the bottom to the top, the right to the middle, the left over it. Here we are, and same again, cover it, wait half an hour, and do it again. Once I've done that 3 times, I'll let my dough ferment. So I keep it on the bench for, depending, after this time, maybe 4 or 5 more hours, depending of how warm the room is. Could take 8 hours, could take 4 hours. It's really something you need to work out here, how it works. Once it's done, I'm going towards the shaping of my dough. So I've been gentle, and I just roll out by squeezing the bottom of the dough with the bottom of my palms of my hands, and give it a little squeeze. It's like tightening the dough over to make it a little smoother. And I try to not knock out the gas, so the carbon dioxide into it. You see these few bubbles here? And I'm gonna prepare my banneton, which is a bread basket. You don't need to use this. You can use just a simple bowl and put quite a bit of flour. I did put quite a bit too much flour, but I'm not a baker, so I'm learning as I go. Turn your dough upside down to the banneton, and I put that into a plastic bag or even a bean bag. And I would let this inside the bag at room temperature, 20-25 degrees, for 2 to 4 hours. My room was quite warm, so it took about 2 hours there, and you see it really increased in volume 3 to 4 times. It's natural. So I'm preparing a tray with silicone paper, turn it upside down, grab the banneton as well as the tray, turn it upside down again, remove the banneton, and here you are, your little rice sourdough. Meanwhile, I preheated my oven at 200 degrees. So the oven should be getting hot. Getting a nice score. Same again, scoring, it's up to you for a little bit design. There's many techniques out there. You can use a sharp blade. That's done, and it's time to put it in the oven. So I bake it at 200 degrees for about 20 minutes. I'm adding some ice towards it. You can put a ramekin of water too. And 20 minutes at 180 degrees, and look at that crust. Rye sourdough a little bit more heavier than just white flour sourdough, therefore you won't have as many big bubbles inside, but still enough. And the taste was unbelievable, amazing. So get your sourdough, get your butter, and get onto it. It's me again. Did you enjoy that recipe? If you did, make sure you share, you like it, you subscribe to this channel, and you share it all over your social media. You can always comment or ask me questions under the video in the description. I'm likely to answer within the 24 hours if I see it. Furthermore, next week I'm going back to the sweet, and I will show you how to make my simple but yet beautiful, delicious, moist carrot cake. So see you next week for next series of Cooking with Frenchie.